Subscribe for the full story.
My son thought the password to my fortune was his birthday. It was the birthday of the dog he abandoned. The cool, metallic click echoed in the silent study. Another failed attempt. David sighed. A dramatic, drawn-out sound that always made me want to roll my eyes. He paced the polished floorboards, his reflection a blur of expensive tailoring. "Honestly, Dad," he said, turning to me with that familiar pleading look, "it's my birthday!" What else could it possibly be? I just watched him, a small, private smile playing on my lips. If you like stories with a good twist and a bit of payback, make sure to subscribe, like this video, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below telling me what you think happens next. The cool, metallic click echoed in the silent study. Another failed attempt. David sighed. A dramatic, drawn-out sound that always made me want to roll my eyes. He paced the polished floorboards, his reflection a blur of expensive tailoring. "Honestly, Dad," he said, turning to me with that familiar pleading look, "it's my birthday." What else could it possibly be? I just watched him, a small, private smile playing on my lips. If you like stories with a good twist and a bit of payback, make sure to subscribe, like this video, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below telling me what you think happens next. I remained silent, my gaze fixed on the sleek black keypad of the biometric safe. David, my only son, was 28 today, a milestone, they say. For me, it was a day to finally set in motion a long-planned, carefully orchestrated lesson. David had been accustomed to a life of effortless abundance. Every whim catered to, every desire fulfilled before he even voiced it. My empire, built from the ground up with grit and unwavering resolve, had become his entitlement. He saw the sprawling estate, the fleet of luxury cars, the discreet accounts in offshore havens, not as the result of tireless effort and calculated risk, but as his birthright. His requests for access to the family fortune, as he so grandly put it, had become more frequent, more insistent. He spoke of investments, of expanding the business, of leaving his own mark. Yet, his ideas were invariably shallow, his ambition fueled by a desire for more accolades and the superficial shimmer of wealth, rather than any genuine understanding or passion for the intricate workings of what I had built. He lacked the fire, the hunger that had propelled me. He was a consumer, not a creator. "Dad, please," he whined, his voice cracking slightly. He was standing too close to the safe, his expensive watch glinting under the soft lamplight. "I need to get those documents for the Sterling deal. They're waiting on me." I finally spoke, my voice low and even, a stark contrast to his agitated tone. "David, you know the protocol. The combination is something significant, something personal." He scoffed. "Personal? It's my birthday, the most significant day for me. You always said you valued family." He paused, as if waiting for me to concede. When I didn't, he leaned closer, his breath misting the cool metal of the safe. "So it has to be my birthday. What else could it be?" He was so close to it, yet so utterly blind. That was the crux of my plan. David had a remarkable talent for seeing only what he wanted to see, for interpreting everything through the lens of his own self-importance. He believed the world revolved around him and that I, his father, was merely a convenient facilitator of his grand destiny. "Think harder, David," I said, my voice carrying a hint of amusement. "What else is deeply significant to our family? What memory do I cherish above all others?" He frowned, his brow furrowed in concentration. He knew the safe held not just financial documents, but the legal papers to several key assets, a testament to years of meticulous acquisition and management. Access to those papers would indeed facilitate his Sterling deal, a deal that, in his excited telling, was sure to be his big break. He had no idea the true nature of the documents he was so eager to procure. He began to rattle off dates. My graduation, the day I got my driver's license, the date we bought this house. Each suggestion was met with a slow, deliberate shake of my head. He was spiraling, his frustration mounting. This was precisely the reaction I had anticipated. No, David, something more profound. Something that shaped us. Something that brought a different kind of joy into our lives. His eyes narrowed. He was struggling. He couldn't grasp that there might be something in our shared history that predated his own existence, something that held more weight than his own personal milestones. He truly believed his birth was the genesis of all significant events in my life. Is it the anniversary of Mom's death?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. A flicker of genuine sadness crossed his face, a rare glimpse of vulnerability. I softened slightly. "No, David." That day, while profoundly significant, was also a day of immense pain. This is about a memory that brings pure, unadulterated happiness. A memory of a different kind of love. His confusion deepened. He looked around the study, as if the answer might be written on the mahogany shelves or hidden within the antique globes. He was so accustomed to me providing him with answers, with solutions, that he had lost the ability to truly search, to truly connect the dots for himself. "Dad, I don't understand," he admitted, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. "What other significant date is there?" I let him stew in his confusion for a moment, enjoying the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The tension in the room was palpable, a testament to his dependence on my approval and, more importantly, my resources. "Tell me, David," I began, my voice dropping to a more conspiratorial tone. "Do you remember the first time we went to the animal shelter, when you were 7? He blinked, taken aback by the sudden shift in topic. "The shelter? Yeah, sure, we were looking for a dog, right? A golden retriever?" "We were," I confirmed, my smile widening. "And you were so excited. You insisted we get the biggest, fluffiest one. The one with the boundless energy and the dopey grin." He nodded slowly, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Yeah, Barkley. He was a great dog." "He was," I agreed, my voice tinged with a nostalgia that David had never bothered to share. "And you absolutely adored him. For years he was your shadow, your constant companion." David shifted uncomfortably. The golden retriever Barkley had been a significant part of his childhood. He'd adored the dog, lavished him with attention. Then, as David grew older, his interests had shifted. The demands of school, the allure of new friends, the burgeoning adolescent self-absorption, all had conspired to push Barkley to the periphery. It was a slow, insidious neglect, one I had watched with growing disappointment. "So, is it Barkley's birthday?" David asked, a hint of exasperation creeping back into his voice. "What was that, anyway? I don't even remember." I let out a soft, knowing laugh. "It was April 12th, David. You were so proud that you'd remembered. You'd meticulously checked his pedigree papers, convinced you'd found the exact date." He stared at the keypad, his eyes darting back and forth between it and my face. April 12th. He was so close. But he still wasn't getting it. He was thinking about the asterisk dog, the animal. He wasn't thinking about the asterisk significance. "April 12th, he muttered, punching in the numbers. Click, failed. "No, that's not it. Are you sure that was it? Maybe you wrote it down wrong." I shook my head. "The date is correct, David. The problem is, you're thinking of it as asterisk Barkley's asterisk birthday." He looked at me, utterly bewildered. "But I just said it's his birthday." "And it is," I conceded, my voice laced with a subtle irony. "But it's also something more to me, something that represents a different kind of turning point. A moment when pure, uncomplicated joy entered our lives, long before the complexities of, well, before you became quite so complicated." He was visibly struggling now. The superficial attempts were over. He was genuinely trying to access a deeper layer of meaning, a layer he had, for so long, avoided engaging with. "I don't understand, Dad," he repeated, his voice softer this time, more resigned. "What do you mean? Something more?" "Think, David," I urged, leaning back in my chair. "Think about the asterisk feeling of that day, the unadulterated happiness, the sheer, unvarnished delight that Barkley brought into this house. It wasn't just a pet, it was a catalyst for something beautiful. It was the day you learned about unconditional love, even if you ultimately forgot how to reciprocate it. Quote, he finally went quiet, his gaze fixed on the keypad, the silence stretched, punctuated only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. He was lost in his own thoughts, replaying fragments of his childhood, trying to connect them to this enigmatic date. April 12th, he whispered again, more to himself than to me. He typed the numbers in again. Click. Failed. You're so close, I said, my voice encouraging, yet still holding that edge of mystery. You have the right date, but you're missing the asterisk Y. You're missing the true significance that Toinsai cores attach to it. Quote, his frustration began to surface again, but it was tempered by a nascent curiosity. He knew this wasn't just a game of numbers, it was a test of his understanding, of his ability to see beyond his own immediate needs and desires. Dad, what are you talking about? He asked, his voice strained. What happened on April 12th that was so important to asterisk you, besides getting the dog? It was the day, I began, choosing my words carefully, the day your mother and I finally felt a sense of complete peace. We had been struggling, David. Building this business was all-consuming. We had moments of happiness, of course, but there was always an underlying anxiety, a constant pressure. And then Barkley arrived. He was a whirlwind of joy, a constant reminder of the simple pleasures in life. Your mother adored him, and seeing her so happy, so relaxed, it was transformative for me. That day, April 12th, was the day I truly felt like we had it all. The business was thriving, and we had this beautiful, loving creature filling our home with pure, unadulterated joy. It was the culmination of everything we had worked for, a moment of perfect equilibrium. David's eyes widened slightly as he processed this. He had never considered his mother's emotional state, her own contributions to their shared happiness, beyond her role as his mother. He saw his parents as a unit that existed solely to provide for him. So it's the day you both felt truly happy? He ventured, tentatively. Precisely, I confirmed. It was a turning point. A day of profound contentment. A day that, for me, represented the pinnacle of what we had achieved together. He looked at the keypad again, a new understanding dawning in his eyes. He wasn't just thinking about his birthday anymore. He was trying to access a memory that wasn't entirely his own, a memory that was intrinsically linked to his mother, and to a time before his own needs had overshadowed everything else. He took a deep breath, his fingers hovering over the keypad. He typed in April 12th again. Click. Failed. No, he whispered, defeated. It's not working. You're still missing something, David, I said, my tone gentle but firm. You have the date. You have the significance I've just explained. What else is there? Think about the dog. Think about what he represented. Think about what your mother loved about him. Think about what Sai loved about him, seeing your mother so happy. He closed his eyes, a deep furrow forming between his brows. He was clearly struggling to access this deeper emotional connection, this shared memory that was so distant from his current self-absorption. He was a rescue, David murmured, his voice barely audible. You always said he was special because he was a rescue. My smile broadened. He was getting there. He was starting to connect the abstract significance to a concrete detail, a detail that held meaning for me and for your mother. He was. I confirmed. And you know what makes a rescue dog truly special, David? It's not just the breed or the appearance. It's the fact that they were given a second chance. That they were saved from something less. He opened his eyes, a flicker of dawning realization. He looked at the keypad, then back at me, a hesitant question forming on his lips. So, it's not just the date. It's the asterisk reason for the date? You're very close, I said, my anticipation building. He was finally grasping the concept of a shared, layered significance. He paused, his fingers hovering over the keypad once more. He was thinking, truly thinking, about the context, the deeper meaning. He was trying to access not just a memory, but the emotional resonance of that memory. "The date, and the fact that he was a rescue," he said slowly, his voice a mix of uncertainty and hope. "So it's the date he was rescued?" I remained silent, letting him connect the final piece of the puzzle. He was so close. The frustration was melting away, replaced by a genuine effort to understand. He took a deep breath. He typed in the numbers. April 12th. Then he paused, his gaze fixed on me, as if seeking a final confirmation. He knew the date. He knew the reason. He was waiting for me to acknowledge that he had finally understood. I gave him a subtle nod. He typed in the numbers again. April 12. He hesitated for a moment, then pressed the final digit, completing the sequence. A soft, melodious chime echoed through the study. The small green light on the keypad illuminated. The heavy metallic door of the safe clicked open. David stared, his mouth agape. He had done it. He had unlocked the safe. He had gained access to his inheritance, to the family fortune. He turned to me, his eyes shining with a mixture of triumph and disbelief. I did it. Quote, "Yes, David," I said, my voice calm and steady. "You did." He eagerly reached for the heavy door, ready to pull it open, ready to claim his prize. But I gently placed my hand on his arm, stopping him. "Wait, David," I said, my gaze locking with his. "There's one more thing you need to understand. The password wasn't just the date of Barclay's rescue. It was the date of your rescue." His brow furrowed. "My rescue? What are you talking about? I was born, Dad." "I wasn't rescued." "You were, David," I said, my voice firm. "You were rescued from a life of entitlement, from a path of self-destruction. You were rescued from becoming a hollow echo of what you could have been. The day Barclay arrived, April 12th, was also the day I truly committed to a different approach. It was the day I decided that I wouldn't let you become a spoiled brat, utterly disconnected from reality. It was the day I started planning this very lesson." He stared at me, his expression a mask of confusion and dawning horror. He finally understood. The password, the key to his perceived fortune, wasn't his birthday. It wasn't a celebration of his existence. It was the date of a much earlier, much more significant rescue, a rescue from himself, orchestrated by me. You mean you, Stu, was the one being rescued?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "Precisely," I confirmed, my gaze unwavering. "The password, David, the very thing you thought was a testament to your importance, was a reminder of a time when I, your father, made a conscious decision to try and save you. A decision that, for a long time, I feared might be in vain." He slowly turned back to the open safe, the contents of which now seemed far less important than the revelation he had just received. He looked at the documents, the legal papers, the symbols of wealth, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. He was grappling with the realization that the foundation of his entitlement was, in fact, a carefully constructed lesson in humility. "So, all this time," he began, trailing off, the weight of my words clearly hitting him. "All this time," I finished for him, "you believed the world revolved around your birthday. You believed your existence was the sole determinant of importance. But the truth, David, is that true significance lies not in what you are given, but in what you earn, and in the ability to appreciate the moments that truly matter, the moments that shape us, even if they aren't directly about you." He stood there, silent, the triumphant gleam in his eyes replaced by a profound introspection. He had sought access to wealth, and in doing so he had stumbled upon a much more valuable and perhaps more painful truth about himself. He had unlocked the safe, but in doing so, he had also begun to unlock himself. The sterling deal could wait. For the first time in a long time, David was truly confronting something beyond his own immediate gratification. He had been so focused on the destination, the fortune, that he had completely missed the journey, the lessons, the very essence of what it meant to be part of something greater than himself. I watched him, a quiet satisfaction settling over me. This was the payback, not a cruel or vindictive punishment, but a necessary redirection. He had spent his life assuming he was the heir to my kingdom, never realizing that the true inheritance was the wisdom to build his own. And perhaps, just perhaps, today marked the beginning of that arduous but ultimately rewarding process. The cool, metallic click of the safe opening had been the sound of his assumption being shattered, and the quiet chime that followed was the nascent sound of his understanding beginning to bloom. The journey, for David, had just begun. The silence in the study was no longer just the absence of noise. It was heavy with a new kind of understanding, or perhaps a nascent dread. David stood before the open safe, his posture rigid, the casual swagger he usually wore like a second skin completely absent. His eyes, usually so quick to dart with impatience, were now fixed on the stacks of documents within. But I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that he wasn't seeing the sterling deal papers. He was seeing himself, reflected in the polished steel, a distorted image he was only just beginning to recognize. So, he finally managed, his voice a strained whisper, "You planned this whole thing? Even Barkley?" The question hung in the air, laced with an incredulity that bordered on accusation. "Every detail, David," I confirmed, my gaze steady. "From the day Barkley came into our lives, I began laying the groundwork. Not for your eventual inheritance as you assumed, but for your eventual understanding. I watched you grow, David. I saw the inherent goodness in you, a spark that had been there from birth. But I also saw how easily it could be buried, how quickly entitlement could suffocate genuine character. Your mother and I, we built this life, through immense sacrifice. And it would have been a disservice to her memory, to all our struggles, to simply hand it over to someone who saw it as a mere trinket, a validation of their own existence." He finally turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something that wasn't entitlement or impatience. It was a raw, unvarnished vulnerability. "But why? Why make it so difficult? Why not just talk to me?" I offered a wry smile. "David, we have talked. We've had countless conversations. I've offered advice, suggestions, guidance. But you've never truly taught or listened. You've always heard what you wanted to hear, interpreted everything through the lens of your own immediate desires. The sterling deal, for instance. You were so focused on the supposed prestige, the financial windfall, that you never stopped to consider the ethics of the proposed acquisition, the impact on the employees, the long-term sustainability. You saw a quick win, a feather for your cap. I saw a potential disaster waiting to happen, a reckless gamble with the foundation we've built." He ran a hand through his hair, his earlier agitation replaced by a weary confusion. I thought I was making you proud. I thought this was what you wanted." "I want you to be capable, David," I corrected, my voice softening slightly. "I want you to be resilient. I want you to understand that true wealth isn't measured in dollars in a bank account, but in character, in integrity, in the ability to navigate challenges with grace and wisdom. You have the intelligence, David. You have the resources, but you lacked the grounding. You lacked the understanding that nothing truly valuable is ever effortless." He looked back at the safe, his expression thoughtful. "So this is just the beginning, isn't it? Unlocking the safe wasn't the end goal." "Indeed," I confirmed. "This is merely the opening of the first door. The sterling deal documents are in there, along with legal precedents, market analyses, and my own personal notes on the company's ethical standing. Consider it your first assignment, not to complete the deal, but to understand it, to dissect it, to identify its strengths and its weaknesses, not just financially, but morally. I want you to present me with a comprehensive analysis, not just of the numbers, but of the entire proposition. And I want you to do it without the pressure of a deadline, without the need to impress me with a quick victory. I want you to do it because it's the right thing to do, and because you've learned to think critically, to look beyond the superficial." He nodded slowly, a new resolve beginning to flicker in his eyes. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The bravado was gone, replaced by a quiet determination. He was no longer the petulant child demanding his inheritance. He was becoming something more. And "What about the business itself?" he asked, his voice still a little shaky, but with a newfound curiosity. "You said you built this from the ground up." I don't know much about that." "That," I said, rising from my chair and walking towards the window, gazing out at the vast expanse of the estate bathed in the soft twilight, "is precisely the point. You know the result, the fruits of that labor, but not the labor itself. That's what the next phase of your education will entail. You'll spend time in the factories, on the shop floor, understanding the intricacies of production, the dedication of our workforce. You'll sit with the accountants, learn the art of balance sheets, the subtle dance of financial stewardship. You'll travel to our international branches, not as a tourist but as a student, learning the global landscape of our operations. You will understand the risks, the rewards, the endless hours of painstaking work that go into every successful venture." He listened intently, absorbing my words with an almost childlike wonder. It was a stark contrast to the impatience he'd displayed mere hours ago. "This is a lot," he admitted, a hint of awe in his voice. "It is," I agreed. "And it will be challenging. There will be times you'll want to revert, to demand, to simply give up. But that's when you'll need to remember April 12th. Not just the date of Barclay's rescue, but the date of your own. The day I decided to fight for you, to invest in your potential. Even when it seemed like you were determined to squander it. Remember that the greatest gifts are often the hardest earned, and that true legacy isn't inherited, it's cultivated." I walked back to the safe and retrieved the sterling deal documents, handing them to him. "Begin with this. Take your time. Think. Analyze. And when you feel you have a clear understanding, not just of the numbers, but of the implications, you'll present your findings to me. There is no rush. The world will not end if the sterling deal doesn't happen tomorrow. But your understanding of what truly constitutes success, that is paramount." He took the files, his fingers brushing against mine. There was a newfound respect in his touch, a subtle shift in his aura. He no longer seemed like a spoiled heir demanding his due, but a young man on the cusp of a genuine awakening. "Thank you, Dad," he said, and this time the words felt entirely genuine, stripped of any artifice. "You haven't thanked me yet, David," I replied gently. "You've only just begun the work. But I have faith. For the first time, I truly have faith that you will rise to the occasion. You have the blood of a builder in your veins, David. It's time you learn to use it." Quote. He nodded, a small, determined smile now playing on his lips. He turned and walked towards the door, the files clutched firmly in his hand. He didn't look back. He didn't ask for permission to leave. He simply walked. A man embarking on a journey he had never anticipated, armed with a lesson far more valuable than any inheritance. As the study door swung shut behind him, I felt a profound sense of peace. The dramatic pronouncements, the years of subtle maneuvering, the carefully crafted facade, it had all served its purpose. David had always been so focused on the destination, on the material markers of success. He had believed that the key to his happiness lay in accumulating wealth, in achieving outward validation. But the true key, I had finally shown him, lay within. It lay in the cultivation of character, in the understanding of purpose, and in the quiet, enduring strength that came from earning one's way. The echo of the safe's click, the faint chime of its opening, had been more than just the sound of a lock yielding. It had been the sound of a carefully constructed illusion shattering, and the quiet birth of something far more significant. David had unlocked the safe, but in doing so, he had also begun to unlock himself. The journey ahead would be long, arduous, and undoubtedly filled with its own set of challenges. But for the first time in a very long time, I believed he was ready to face them, not as a recipient of my legacy, but as a creator of his own. And that, I knew, was the greatest inheritance of all. The night was still young, and the world outside the study waited, not with the eager anticipation of a son demanding his due, but with the quiet promise of a future earned. My role as the orchestrator was nearing its end, but my role as a father, a guide, a witness to his unfolding potential was just beginning. The true payback was not in any act of retribution, but in the transformation of a privileged son into a capable man. And that, I thought, as I poured myself a quiet glass of scotch, was a twist worth waiting for. The heavy oak door of the study clicked shut behind David, the sound a punctuation mark at the end of an era. I leaned back in my chair, the worn leather sighing a familiar comfort. The silence that descended was no longer weighted with expectation or accusation, but with a nascent hope. The heavy dread I sensed had begun to recede, replaced by the quiet hum of purpose that had been conspicuously absent from David's life for so long. I poured myself a glass of scotch, the amber liquid catching the late evening light. It wasn't a celebration, not yet. It was a pause, a moment to absorb the shift, the almost imperceptible tremor of change that had rippled through our meticulously constructed world. For years I had played a part, a puppeteer pulling strings unseen, guiding David through a labyrinth of his own making. And now, the first true thread of agency, of genuine decision-making, had been placed in his hands. The sterling deal. A tangled knot of potential profit and ethical compromise. David had seen it as a stepping stone, a glittering prize to cement his status. I had seen it as a crucible, a test designed to reveal the metal hidden beneath layers of privilege. His initial reaction, the stammered disbelief, the thinly veiled accusation, had been predictable, a testament to the warped lens through which he viewed the world. He saw transactions, not relationships, victories, not responsibilities. But as I had watched him, as I had patiently explained, cajoled, and finally revealed the intricate tapestry of his inheritance, something had shifted. The raw vulnerability, the flicker of genuine confusion when I spoke of my wife, of her sacrifices, had been the first crack in his armor. It was the crack through which the light of understanding, however faint, began to filter. The ensuing days were a quiet testament to that shift. David didn't storm out of the house, nor did he retreat into sullen silence. He went to his room, the sterling deal documents clutched in his hand. I didn't intrude, didn't offer unsolicited advice. I simply observed, a silent sentinel in the periphery of his awakening. The first hint that the sterling deal was being viewed through a new prism came in the form of a late-night visit to the library. I heard the soft shuffle of his footsteps, the rustle of paper. I resisted the urge to follow. He needed to grapple with this on his own, to feel the weight of the decisions, the consequences. He needed to move beyond the superficial and delve into the substance. Weeks blurred into a quiet rhythm. David was no longer glued to his phone, scrolling through social media or indulging in idle speculation. He was engaged. I saw him in the gardens, not lounging, but observing, his brow furrowed in thought as he watched the groundskeepers at work. He started asking questions, not of me, but of the people who had dedicated their lives to building this empire. He spoke to the head of manufacturing, to the chief financial officer, to the heads of marketing. He wasn't demanding answers. He was seeking to understand. One evening, he presented his analysis of the sterling deal. It wasn't a polished PowerPoint, nor a hastily scribbled memo. It was a detailed, handwritten report bound with twine. His initial assessment of the financial upside was still there, a concession to his inherent business acumen, but it was now tempered by a profound consideration of the ethical implications. He had dissected the company's labor practices, its environmental impact, its history of community engagement. He had even delved into the personal histories of some of the key players, trying to understand their motivations, their vulnerabilities. He had concluded that the deal, as it stood, was ultimately detrimental, not just to the people affected by the acquisition, but to our company's long-term reputation and sustainability. He proposed an alternative, a collaborative venture that would prioritize ethical growth and employee well-being over immediate profit. He had even drafted a preliminary proposal, outlining the terms and conditions, demonstrating a grasp of negotiation that surprised even me. It's not the quick win you were looking for," he admitted, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it, devoid of the swagger that had once defined him. "But I think it's the right approach. It's what Mom would have wanted." The mention of his mother, so casual yet so profound, was a turning point. It wasn't just about pleasing me anymore. It was about honoring her memory, about carrying forward the legacy of integrity she had embodied. "It is, David," I confirmed, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "It is exactly what she would have wanted." This was the beginning. The sterling deal was just the first hurdle, the initial test. The real work, the forging of his character, the cultivation of his potential, was about to begin in earnest. The next phase involved the factories, the shop floor. I took him to the sprawling manufacturing complex that formed the backbone of our empire. The sheer scale of it, the symphony of machinery, the sweat and dedication of the hundreds of men and women who toiled there, was a world away from the sterile elegance of his penthouse apartment. At first he was hesitant, a fish out of water. The noise was overwhelming, the smells unfamiliar. He looked uncomfortable, out of place. He kept his distance, his gaze flitting around as if seeking an escape route. "You don't need to do this, Dad," he'd said, his voice laced with the old entitlement. "I can just oversee it." "No, David," I'd countered, my tone firm but gentle. "You don't oversee it. You understand it. You feel the rhythm of the machines, the pulse of the workers. You see the dedication in their eyes, the pride in their craftsmanship. This is where the real value is created, David. Not in the gilded boardrooms, but here, on the ground." I paired him with Frank, a seasoned foreman, a man who had worked his way up from the shop floor, his hands calloused, his mind sharp. Frank was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He didn't coddle David. He put him to work, starting with the most basic tasks: cleaning machinery, sorting parts, learning the assembly line. David struggled. He was unaccustomed to physical labor, his muscles protesting, his hands blistering. There were moments of frustration, of near defeat. He would catch my eye, a silent plea for me to intervene, to rescue him from this indignity. But I held firm, my own gaze unwavering. This was a baptism by fire, a necessary shedding of his former self. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, a change began to occur. The initial awkwardness gave way to a hesitant curiosity. He started asking Frank questions, not about profits or projections, but about the mechanics of the machines, the challenges of production, the lives of the people working alongside him. He learned to listen, to observe, to appreciate the intricate dance of human effort and industrial might. He even began to offer suggestions, not as pronouncements, but as collaborative ideas, born from his burgeoning understanding. The shop floor was just the beginning. He spent weeks on the factory floor, absorbing the rhythm of production. Then came the accountants' offices. Sitting with Sarah, our meticulous CFO, he learned the language of balance sheets, of profit margins, of cash flow. He discovered the intricate interplay of numbers, the delicate art of financial stewardship. He saw that wealth wasn't just about acquisition. It was about responsible management, about the careful allocation of resources, about the long-term sustainability of the enterprise. He discovered the satisfaction of a balanced ledger, the intellectual puzzle of financial forecasting. He even developed a knack for spotting inefficiencies, for identifying areas where our financial practices could be improved. He wasn't just inheriting wealth. He was learning to manage it, to nurture it, to make it work for the greater good. Then came the international branches. He traveled to our operations in Europe, in Asia, in South America. He wasn't a tourist, taking in the sights and sounds. He was a student, immersing himself in the local business cultures, understanding the nuances of global trade, the challenges of cross-cultural communication. He learned to adapt, to be flexible, to navigate the complexities of a globalized marketplace. He witnessed firsthand the impact of our business on different communities, the opportunities and the challenges that arose from our presence. He saw that success wasn't just about the bottom line. It was about building relationships, fostering trust, and contributing to the economic well-being of the regions in which we operated. Through it all, I remained a quiet presence, a supportive observer. I didn't hover, didn't micromanage. I allowed him to make his own mistakes, to learn from his own experiences. He faced setbacks, moments of doubt, instances where he felt overwhelmed. But each time, he found a way to persevere, to draw strength from the lessons he was learning, from the burgeoning understanding of what it truly meant to be a leader. The memory of April 12th became a constant touchstone. He spoke of it often, not as a date of his rescue, but as the day I had shown him a different path. It was the day I had invested in his potential, in the spark of goodness that lay dormant within him. He understood now that true inheritance wasn't a handout, it was an earned trust, a responsibility to uphold the values that had been instilled in him. One crisp autumn afternoon, months after the Sterling deal had been quietly reconfigured into a more equitable partnership, David sought me out in my study. He wasn't seeking instructions or permission, he was seeking dialogue. "Dad," he began, his voice calm and measured, "I've been thinking about the next phase, about expanding into sustainable energy. I've been doing some research, and I believe there's a significant opportunity there, but I want to do it differently. I want to ensure that our growth is aligned with our values, that it benefits not just our shareholders, but the planet as well." He laid out his plan, a detailed proposal that demonstrated a remarkable understanding of the market, the technology, and the ethical considerations involved. He had thought through the supply chain, the environmental impact, the potential for community engagement. He spoke with a quiet confidence, a depth of knowledge that had been absent before. "This is good, David," I said, my heart swelling with a pride I hadn't dared to feel before. "This is very good." He looked at me, a genuine smile gracing his lips. It wasn't the forced smile of obligation, but the warm, genuine smile of a son who had finally found his footing. "Thank you, Dad," he said, and this time the words carried the weight of sincerity, of gratitude, of a shared understanding. "Thank you for all of it, for the struggle, for the lessons." "You earned it, David," I replied, meeting his gaze. "You've earned every step of this journey. You've proven that the blood of a builder runs true in your veins. You've learned to use it, not to conquer, but to create, to build something meaningful, something lasting." He nodded, his eyes reflecting the quiet determination that now defined him. He was no longer the boy who demanded his inheritance, but the man who was ready to build his own legacy. He understood that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in character, in integrity, in the ability to navigate life's challenges with wisdom and grace. The study door swung open, and David walked out, not towards the familiar comforts of his old life, but towards the unknown terrain of his future. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He carried with him not just the Sterling deal documents, but a far more valuable inheritance, the understanding of himself, the knowledge of his capabilities, and the unwavering conviction that the greatest gifts are those that are earned. As I watched him go, a profound sense of peace settled over me. The years of careful maneuvering, the elaborate facade, the carefully orchestrated challenges, they had all served their purpose. I had played my role as the orchestrator, the architect of his awakening. But now, my role as a father, as a guide, as a witness to his unfolding potential, was truly beginning. The payback wasn't in any act of retribution, but in the transformation of a privileged son into a capable man, a man ready to build his own future, not on the foundation of my legacy, but on the strength of his own character. The night was still young, and the world outside the study waited, not with the eager anticipation of a son demanding his due, but with the quiet promise of a future earned. And as I poured myself another quiet glass of scotch, I knew that this was a twist, a revelation worth waiting for. The safe had been opened, but more importantly, David had begun to unlock himself. The journey ahead would be his, and his alone. But he was finally equipped with the tools to navigate it, not as an heir, but as a creator.
Subscribe for the full story.